Today, we're looking at Diamine's Beau Blue. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Diamine's Beau Blue is a light blue ink. Before we go to the writing samples, I'd really like to take a look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I have learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies over the years. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, I put it in the water for 10 to 15 seconds, and I let it creep up. What do we see? A little bit of blue left, it runs away, and then some blue again up top. Very light blue. Now the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And it almost looks exactly the same. Little bit of darker blue at the bottom, light all the way up, and then it's actually much darker at the top of it. It seems like as it got to sit there, more of it ran away to the top. I don't know. Now, resistance tests are done to see how well this can be expected to perform on the page, but more importantly, how hard it might be to clean out of your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before I test it. Surprisingly, being such a light blue, it performed very well with the highlighter. It didn't seem to reactivate and feather, it didn't spread from it, it didn't get gross. It actually did very nice, which surprised me based on the chromatography. And water reactivated it quite a bit. I put the drop of water on, it was there for 30 seconds, and I blot it up. Most all of that ink came off, only leaving the very light blue. Now, Pen Flush did the same thing as the water, except it moved a little bit more of it, but you should not need to use Pen Flush to get this out of your pen. Bleach completely removed it, and you're insane if you're using bleach to get this out of your pen. This is a bell curve or a normal distribution. For the 365 inks I've tested, I found an average viscosity of 2.5. Now I found the range of normal goes from 2.1 to 2.9. Diamine Beau Blue has a viscosity of 1.38. Holy moly, that's a wet ink. That's a heavy flower. Yeah. That's all I say about that. Now this is a bell curve or a normal distribution for the average dry time. For the 365 inks tested, I have found the average dry time is 17 seconds and that the range of normal goes from 13 to 21 seconds. And Diamine's Beau Blue has an average dry time of 17 seconds, exactly in the center, a very normal dry time. Now how do I find my dry time? I average my writing samples for the extra fine and medium nib on my Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. Now, let's take a look at the writing samples. I have this ink in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, as I always do, I'm using a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub. I'm using a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's look at Clairefontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. With the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, some shading. Some shading is happening here, which is nice. On the extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, shading. But it's such a light blue that even the shading isn't a dark blue. So it's there. Kind of makes me think about clouds. Clouds in the sky and how you can see different blues through them. 11 seconds to dry, which is strange with it being such a light color. But it was 11 seconds to dry. On to the medium. We have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, shading. A lot more shading here than we had in the extra fine. 16 seconds to dry. Looking at the scrubby, we do see that we get some shading that occurs in the scrubby. And it's such a light ink that if you smeared it, it's gone. On the Tomoe River, we have no bleeding, very little ghosting because it is so light. With the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, some shade. And when we go on to the extra fine, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Again, a little bit of shading. 18 seconds to dry for such a light ink. I'm not willing to wait 18 seconds.
But something interesting happens on the medium. Because we're putting down more, we still get no feather, no spread. We do get some haloing, which is like somebody outlined letters. We get it on the cue of the quick. I don't think I can get in close enough. You gonna work with me, camera? You get it on a cue of the quick. You get it on some of the jumps. So we do get some of that haloing, which is just really neat to see. So we get some halo. Nice. No sheen, some shade. In the scrub, we don't expect to see shade because it doesn't show up in a scrubby. And on a smear, Tomoe River, you never get to recover it. Now looking at Rhodia, we have no bleeding, no ghosting. With the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no shade, really, minor spots. I don't know that I really want to call it shading. It's just very, very minor spots that do happen. That could be me lifting the pen ever so slightly from the page. There we go. On the extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We do get some shading that occurs in the writing. We do get it. We see it in a dog. We see it in a fox. We see it in lazy. We see it in over. We see it in dry. So it occurs enough that I would say, yes, we are getting some shade with this ink. I'm looking at my notes, and I am not seeing the shading occur using a broad on a Lavender True Writer. I'm really not seeing the shading occur there. But I do get it here a little bit with the extra fine. Looking at the medium, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. If we put where my thumb is, no real shade. No shading really. 17 seconds to dry. Looking at the scrubby for both the extra fine and the medium, we don't see much shading that occurs at all, so we're not expecting it in a writing sample, and I did not expect to see any of it at all in a broad nib. The smear, it's too light in ink, you're not going to get to recover it. Now I tested this also with the Rhodia yellow legal pad. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. I did it because I wanted to see what happens with the color, and look at that neat green. I turned Beau Blue into Beau Green. Real nice. I like this green. This is fantastic. I would use this ink on yellow paper. I don't care for it on white paper, but I like it on yellow. So with the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. With the extra fine, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We start actually seeing the shade. It's just the difference of what we're able to see with some of the blues and some of the greens. But we do start to see a little bit of the shading when it comes to the extra fine. 13 seconds to dry. On a medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. More shading, a little more shading. And that's ignoring the spot where I always put my thumb. Look at the jumps. We see shading in the jumps. We see some shading in the brown. We see some shading in the over and in the. Shading is there here. On the yellow, we get it. On the white paper, we didn't. 17 seconds to dry. Looking at the scrubby, if you look at the extremes, left to right of both of them, don't look at the whole, but look at the extremes, and you do see that you're going to get some of that shading. Again, it's still too light in ink. If I smear it, it's gone. And then I went to Limone paper because Limone has just not been doing well, and I wanted to give it a nice light, well-behaved ink to see what could happen, and it bled. It bled. With the 1.1, we have feather, we have spread, we have no halo, no sheen, no shade. With the extra fine, we have minor feathering that goes on in certain spots. I see it in the dog. I see it in the fox. I see it a little bit in the ER of over. The feathering's not out of control, but it's there. We have no real spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 6 seconds to dry. On the medium, still getting feathering. I don't expect that to improve with a broader, wetter nib. It looks like it spread some. it looks like there's a little bit of spread going on there. So if I compare it to the Rhodia, that's definitely spread. I didn't really get the spread with the extra fine, but I do get the spread with the medium, so there's something to keep in mind. No halo, no sheen, no shade. Really. Looking at the scrubby, both the extra fine and the medium, we don't expect to get shade from this ink. The smear, though, you could definitely recover this. Despite this being such a light colored ink, you could definitely recover this if you smeared while you were writing on this notebook paper. I don't know why you'd want to use this notebook paper, having tested it and it bleeding so frequently. So that's what I have for the writing samples.
Instead of finding an ink that looks like Diamine's Beau Blue, I would prefer to find an ink that complements that light blue on the page. This meant I felt I needed a darker, rich brown, like Noodler's Kiowa Pecan. Has great shading, and it is a gorgeous brown that truly offsets this very light blue. Before I give my opinions on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, I'd invite you to subscribe. Now, to make sure that I have a range of experience with this ink, I do my writing samples. I then put this ink into a different pen and write with it for a day. I then put it into a Lavender True Writer with a broad nib to take my notes for this video. So what do I think about Diamine's Beau Blue? It's just too light for me. I'm not a fan of very light blues. So it doesn't say anything about the ink. It says about my color choices on inks. But it gave a very cool green on the yellow Rhodia paper, and that was cool. So would I buy a bottle of this ink? No. But that's because I don't care for light blues. It is nothing bad about the ink. It is too light for me. I have put it into some disposable pens and had students use it, and they love this blue. I just don't care for it. I wouldn't be willing to buy a bottle. Thanks for watching.